Welcome to Entrepreneurs, Executives, and Eccentrics, a podcast dedicated to the stories, strategies, and secrets of remarkable individuals. Join us as we engage in enlightening conversations with intriguing entrepreneurs, accomplished executives, and fascinating eccentrics, exploring their journeys, triumphs, and the unconventional wisdom that has shaped their success. In this episode, we talk with Rachal, co-founder of Hireframe, a remote staffing firm that helps B2B tech companies hire teams in Mexico and the Philippines. Tyler explains what nearshoring gets right, where it breaks down, and the details founders often miss, from local pay norms to legal setup. We also cover how AI boosts remote teams and why many startups now hire globally from day one.
Hello, Tyler. Tell me who you are and what you do.
Hi there, Scott. It's a pleasure to be on. I'm Tyler Rachal. I'm one of the co-founders of Hireframe. We are a remote staffing firm, and we work with mostly B2B tech companies. So think B2B SaaS, all these businesses that are trying to go from seed to typically Series C. We help them staff a number of positions with folks that are based in Mexico and the Philippines. So obviously cost savings is a big part. And we're staffing across the board. I will say we do mostly staffing within finance and accounting, sales, marketing, and typically operations. One that comes up a lot that we don't do a ton of is engineering. We do a little bit of that, but not a ton.
Yeah, and it's interesting now, the whole concept of nearshoring, right? And
Yes.
it kind of blipped in my radar maybe around COVID.
Yeah.
And the first article I read with the New York Times was about someone along the lines of Indian firm moves to Yucatan Peninsula, right? Because
Yeah.
they're in their time zone, but they're not having to deal with H-1B or whatever. And that was that first concept. Then Mexico for the first time really got into my consciousness, and I realized they were pumping out just fantastic software engineers left and right. And I don't know how did that happen, A, and B, how did you, Mexico's difficult to do business with because you have to have a corporation there, you got to pay their taxes, all kinds of craziness. How did you learn all that stuff?
Yeah, great question. So I come from the world of outsourcing. So you mentioned nearshoring, offshoring, all the above. This has been my career. Before I founded Hireframe, I was at a small startup called Taskus. So the song, they talk about, they paved over paradise to put up a parking lot. Well, they did actually pave over our old dilapidated bungalow that we all worked out of in Los Angeles. I was employee number 4. And when I joined the company, Taskus, there were 4 of us in Santa Monica, and there were about 50. People always say agents. We never loved that term, but that's probably the easiest for your listeners. We had 50 agents over in the Philippines. I helped grow that business over the next 6.5 years to 13,000 employees. And to your question, we grew from the Philippines to, I got to know Mexico because we opened up a large office in Tijuana. I also worked in El Salvador, and then I worked in San Antonio, Texas, which if you're coming from Los Angeles like me, San Antonio, Texas can feel like another country in some ways, even though it's very much part of the United States. But so through my work at Taskus, which was an incredible experience, you can look them up there. They're publicly traded. They just went private again. So, they did just shy of $1 billion in revenue last year, which is incredible from the days when we did 2.5 million. But I learned a lot about all these countries, how you work in those countries, what are the different, laws, things and also what is customary to employees. Like the thing that I tell anybody who's looking to, let's say, hire directly in a place like Mexico, they probably haven't heard of what's called 13th month, which is exactly like it sounds. Employees in the Philippines and in Mexico expect a 13th month bonus. So effectively, they're going to get that bonus at the end of the year that is equal or greater than their, 1 month salary. So that sort of thing. These are things that most people don't know when you're working with someone off of Upwork.
Yeah, and culturally speaking, the Filipinos have this almost perfect English accent, American accent, right? It's almost indistinguishable from American English. And while I find that there's definitely a language barrier in Mexico, I find them to be super bright. I mean, just actually quite you're really good. But again, there's that problem in Mexico with you'd have to have that corporation in Tijuana or wherever you've
Yeah.
actually got it. And that's kind of, so how did you figure that out? Like, did you go there, or how did you have a partner there? How'd that go?
Yeah, great question. So we hired some folks. We do the same sort of approach to opening up any country. We hire people in country first and foremost as contractors to help us get a lay of the land and get everything set up. I will say that nearshoring, if you decide to go direct yourself, now fortunately today there are a number of different platforms where you can basically use them as like a PEO. There'll be an employer for you, and you can pay a small fee to do that. They can provide your employees with normal benefits. They can help you with taxes. They are the legal entity that does exist today. When we started Hireframe, that really wasn't a thing. Yeah, so it was way harder. I will say that it's not working in these countries is not for the faint of heart. We're very fortunate. People complain about things in the United States as far as, oh, the government is so corrupt. Well, it's a whole different thing when you get outside of the United States. A lot of these places, you can, if you're not careful, you can get taken advantage of. And I would even say too, it was really beneficial that I had spent a lot of time working in these countries. I had physically done site visits, flown there, built a network in all of these countries to really understand where are the sort of pitfalls, because it's basic things like, for example, I'll give you in Mexico, in Cancun, there's a decent call center economy. You have to be very careful of hiring people in Cancun because it also happens to be kind of the fraud capital of Mexico, where a lot of fraud that is happening in the United States, that talent, and I do say talent because it does take talent to do that. That talent is actually oftentimes in a call center in Cancun. Nothing against those employees, but it's something that you need to be aware of. And you mentioned accent, which is an interesting thing. If you work with, say, an engineering team in Mexico City is dramatically different, the demographic, versus one of the border cities. So if you were to work in Tijuana or one of these other places that is closer to Arizona, California, Texas, right? It's a much, much different population than, say, you're going to find in Mexico City. And in turn, you're also going to find a lot of people that have a quote unquote more Americanized accent because oftentimes they grew up kind of in both places, going a lot to Texas and that sort of thing. So yeah, you nailed it. It's you have to get the lay of the land. And I always say that, someone had a really crass kind of way of putting it. They would say like, there's a lot of, I knew someone that would say there's a lot of dumb people in outsourcing, right? They would say a lot of dumb, smart people in outsourcing, people that are extremely talented. There's this kind of like encyclopedic knowledge that you get. None of it is like, I know that you have a really great technical background, literally NASA. So none of it is like that level. It's more just so learnings that you get from just sort of being involved for oftentimes decades.
Yeah, it's and then there was a cheat code there for a while, right? You could like, hiring, looking for labor in Mexico that used to live in the States, right? And that was like, that was a cheat code because they would take the kind of local economy, right? But you would actually get someone similar diction and similar English and similar training, I guess, in the States. And then those people ran out. They realized they were worth a lot more money, right? So that ability to go find those people kind of went to zero. Oh, at least it did 5 or 6 years ago when I did to it.
Yes.
And and on and on and on. So so how long ago did you start this company? How many years have you been in business?
We took our first customer in December of 2019. So call it, we've been in business for yes.
And I take a guess here. It was someone you were doing. That first customer was like a friend or like someone you already knew, right? And you already kind of like, well, I guess I could do it for you directly, right? And then you're scrambling to go make all the lies come true, and like, oh, I guess I need a contract. Oh, I guess I need insurance. Oh, I guess I need all this stuff that kind of goes along with it, right? And you make all the lies come through, and boom, you've got your first dollar comes in.
Scott, it's like you've talked to me before.
Right.
This is you obviously totally get it. And I love that you just kind of hit on that. I always call it the real founding story. You know, when people get up and they say, "Hey, I'm starting this
Love it.
platform.
Yeah.
I'm starting this platform because I believed that, food delivery should be revolutionized." And it's like, no, you didn't. Like, you were a couple people at Stanford. You wanted to make $1 billion and you saw the TAM and you're like, let's do it. But they kind of speak to, all this kind of noble mission and all this yada, yada, yada. And they don't tell the real story. You're absolutely right. The real story about Hireframe is my partner and I, we were actually looking to, they become quite popular, but we were running a self-funded search fund. We were trying to acquire a small business. If you've heard of ETA, entrepreneurship through acquisition, like I said, it was something that, probably like 5-7 years ago, most people hadn't heard of. Now it's kind of become quite popular, especially with MBA students. So we were looking to acquire a business. That search takes a very long time. We were struggling to find that perfect fit. We kissed a lot of frogs, never found that right, prince or princess for us. And in the interim, we had both come from pretty, I'd say high income jobs to making $0. Our friend, a mutual friend of ours, had just raised $50 million in venture capital. This is in the ZERP era, so this is literally $50 million for just an idea. Doesn't really exist anymore, that sort of thing. But he had raised this money. He needed to hire a bunch of staff, and he messaged us. He said, "Hey, you guys have experience with, hiring talent in the Philippines. I heard it's a great destination. Can you recommend any vendors that would be a good fit for me?" And we hopped on a call, talked to him about what his needs were. And then you're totally right. We just very spur of the moment said, "Hey, we could do this for you," and absolutely scrambled to put together a contract, scrambled to put together. We didn't have a website or a name for, I think, the first 2 years in business. So yeah, we were literally nothing, but it was started purely just to make a little bit of money. You were going to say something.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, in the beginning, you're only working with people you know, right? So
Yes.
they don't really care about your lack of name. And then there's this
No.
little buddy here, Crossing the Chasm. Have you heard of this book before?
I have
Right?
not, but I'm gonna have to check it out now.
And everybody listening to this call or this episode, they're all rolling their eyes right now because I pull this out every 3 episodes. Anyway,
Yeah.
in the very beginning, you're basically just dealing with people who are desperate. You're dealing
Yes.
with with the Belgians who have been raided by the Vikings 20 or
Yep.
10 years in a row, and they're like, "God,
Yes.
if you could just give us a steel sword, we could maybe get them." They're very desperate; they'll pay anything, right? And then
Totally.
there's the kind of pragmatists make up like something like 75 to 90% of the rest of the market, but they
Yep.
need proof. They need brand.
Yes.
They need names. They need websites, right? But in the beginning, these guys will take anything, right? Because they're kind of desperate for what you do.
So I will definitely pick up that book because I'm right there firmly. Hireframe is firmly in the middle. We grew this business 100% by referral for call it the first 4 years in business. Last year, we learned the hard way is sort of you've seen all this, especially in tech in the last kind of 2-3 years, there's been a big market correction, right? The free money, it turns out that was powering a lot of this growth. And now the free money's not there as much, or it's just a little bit more scrutinized. It's a little bit harder. And that Crossing the Chasm book sounds like the perfect one for us because we learned that lesson the hard way. We're now building that foundational marketing stuff.
Here.
Yeah, we're there.
Right.
We're there.
Yep.
Exactly.
Right.
No, you absolutely nailed it. But that's exactly how the business started was, it started with a friend and it just became very organic. And to your point, especially if you look at the timing of it, everybody experienced the same thing, right? During COVID, it was like, oh my God, we're going out of business to I can't hire fast enough. And so we definitely benefited from that time.
So okay, so you now you have a dollar coming in, or you've got maybe a couple of dollars coming in. You're on your third or fourth client. It's basically through word of mouth.
Yes.
You're, and that's the thing. Are you the actual employer of record? Right? No, you're not. Paying,
We are. Yeah.
Overseas taxes, as an example. Okay, you're the employer of record, right?
We make it explicitly clear to the client that we are the employer. Oftentimes we work with tech companies and things they care deeply about. They care about employment law because they do not want to be responsible for anything.
Intellectual property.
Exactly. And then intellectual property. You nail it. Those are the two parts of the contract that I always spend the most time on. But yes, exactly. That's the relationship. We fill positions, we staff them, and we provide the same. I know you've had a experience in the staffing world. too, so you understand this, is that we're providing, the flexibility as well. It's the cost savings by going to Mexico and the Philippines, but it's also the flexibility. A lot of the companies we're working with, they, especially if you look at a seed or a Series A company, they have not quite figured it out. So oftentimes when they're bringing on a new hire, they're not fully committed to that hire long term, but they do want to try it. And that's where, the flexibility of a Hireframe really works out.
So okay, so Series A is typically like, okay, well, there's a little blood in the water. We're gonna give you a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of gas, maybe, to see if we can go find that whale. We don't really know if it's
Yes.
there. We
Yep.
suspect it's in the area. Here's $1 million. Here's 500,000. Here's 100,000. Not whatever. Here's your
Yes.
very small bet. And in the real world, a private equity is actually making thousands of those little bets, right? Taking a very and then like, okay, B is scale species, right? Is typically when like, oh, there's a whale here, right? And all you need is a really big harpoon or a bunch of boats or whatever to go after it. Metaphor done. So so that is kind of where you come in. And I think my definition of scale, well, part of my definition of scale is maximizing minimal resources, right? But 5 years ago, like no one cared because it was billions and gazillions of dollars. They're like, whatever,
Yes.
let's go do it, right? Now
Yes.
I feel like your service is even more important.
Yeah. Obviously, appreciate you, teeing it up that way. It is, and I do want to comment on something that is important that has changed, and it's sort of a revolution that most people aren't, aware of. We talked about, you made that comment about, finding someone in Mexico with you call it like an American sounding accent, right? That was kind of like V1. The interesting point that we're at now is with AI, the first thought people think about with AI is they think about replacing jobs, right? Or replacing, humans, right? The part that is really interesting when it comes to nearshoring or offshoring with AI is that it's actually the leveling up of that talent, where you might not hire a key business position before in a place like Mexico or the Philippines. That is quickly becoming common practice. And on the talent side, the really interesting thing is that what we're seeing is we're seeing a lot of people that normally, like for example in the Philippines, remittance, right? It's remittance is, people when I say I work with people in the Philippines, the classic example that I get is someone says, "Oh, my grandma, the person that helps her out, her nurse practitioner or whatever it might be, she's Filipina or whatever." Or I met the classic one is on a cruise. We met someone really great. The cruise director was Filipino, that sort of thing, because it was such a big part of their economy. They're literally helping and supporting their people to go out around the world, get jobs so they can send money home. The difference is in this current generation, the folks that are graduating from universities in the Philippines and Mexico, they're choosing to stay home because because of online opportunities and remote work, there are actually great career opportunities where there once maybe weren't. They would have to work for a Mexican, national company. They'd have to work for a Philippines national company, and they would kind of there'd be a ceiling, right, on kind of their earnings and what they can do. So that's the other big, kind of thing that's happening is to your point about being more valuable than ever. Companies, what we're seeing now is it used to be you got to a size, you had a certain size team, then your thing would be, wow, this costs a lot. Let's outsource. That was always it. It was like, hey, we have a customer support team of 25. We need to go to 100, right? Things are very inefficient. And someone in finance would say, well, can't we just work with one of these outsourcing companies? Because to do this in Santa Monica is going to be so expensive, right? The difference
Prohibitively so.
is, right, the difference is now is if you look at companies build globally from the beginning. And in that way, I think our service is taken on a much different value because Hireframe isn't doing a lot of call it like your basic outsourcing jobs. We don't do a lot of data entry. We don't do a lot of virtual assistants. We're actually hiring, I call them mission critical business positions, things like senior accountants who are owning an entire function or an entire team, which is quite different than your normal, like, hey, brute force, we have 100 people doing this right now today in California. We want to take that 100 people and we want to outsource it to Mexico or the Philippines. It's changed in that way. You build globally from the beginning.
Now you sprinkle in AI, and now
You
you
sprinkle an
actually
A.
and now this person who maybe had like 70% communication skill now has 170% communication skills, right?
Absolutely.
Dungeons and Dragons plus 20,
Yeah.
in terms of the ability to communicate effectively. Because now, even if they're looking at if there's a language barrier, like that's not a problem. Like that's no longer much of an issue or less of an issue. I guess I had not thought about how AI is kind of a weird way to say it. We should say LLM, right? ChatGPT and such. It is absolutely levered up people on that aren't here, right? Outsourced people.
Yeah, if you think about it this way, right? So I'm going to shout out someone from my team. We have a team member. Her name is Anna. Anna has worked with us over several years. She started off in kind of like a client supporting role, and now it's like, for lack of a better title, she's almost like a chief of staff to myself and my co-founder. Anna, the most incredible thing about Anna and what she's able to do is I'm able to give her broad direction, strategic direction around what I'm trying to accomplish. And with AI, she has kind of this co-pilot who can talk her through how to execute on something that she's never done before. So the example I would give there is, I mentioned foundational marketing, right? I'm going to say, hand up, ashamed to admit this, I still really don't understand SEO, but we're attempting to do a little bit of SEO this year, right? We've hired a consultant and we're trying to do our own articles and all that jazz. You're probably nodding your head like, I'm sure they're doing it wrong.
No, you're fine. You're totally right.
I guarantee you we're making all the mistakes. But here's the really cool thing is that with Anna, she's able to take just strategic direction and she's able to come back to us with an entire plan. Whereas one of the things that I say to any new Hireframe customer is I talk about a myth they need to get out of their head. Is I say, we're not a virtual assistants company. Don't treat our team members like virtual assistants. Because when you think virtual assistants, you think that you really need to just sort of dictate hyper-specific micro tasks to the person as if they're a child. That is not the case. With AI and also the caliber of talent that we're able to get, you can dictate broad strategic direction, and they can actually take something from, call it 20%, to 100% because they have this co-pilot. They can ask Claude, they can ask ChatGPT, they can say, hey, Anna can go to ChatGPT and say, hey, our company is called Hireframe. We're a remote staffing firm. We employ people here and here. We're trying to write articles featuring sort of these keywords so we can rank for it. What are some potential topics that we can cover that would, fit our business ideas, whatever it is? Give me 20. Okay. These 10 are good, the other 10 stink. Can you go a little bit further? Can you hone in on these 5? I like this, but can you go a little bit deeper on this? It's just an incredible tool. It can't do everything. I'm not saying that AI is the answer, but that did not exist before. Anna would have to get that guidance from us. And now she can get it from, honestly, something that has sort of encyclopedic knowledge that myself and my co-founder will never have.
There's a book called Founder and the Force Multiplier. I'd like you to go purchase it. What
okay.
it is it's really a how-to guide on how to work with your assistant, but ultimately, so it goes chief of staff, which is someone who could almost act in your stead, right? It's literally what their definition. And then there's like these different levels of assistants that actually report to the chief of staff, right?
Yeah.
Please go. I'll send that book to you.
Please.
After the call. But
we're at 2. We're at 2 now. This is awesome.
It's a fantastic book in that it really tells you that we were doing it all wrong to begin with. We have no business in the execution. Execution needs to be outsourced, given to someone else with very close to equal responsibility and power. And that's what that book's basically about.
Scott, can I ask you as a peer, right? Because effectively, I don't know if you feel like this is fair, but I feel like you're an agency owner as well. I mean, I don't mean if that's
Yep, you're right.
An insulting term. Some people are like, I'm not an agency. No, good.
You're a lifestyle business, man. How many times you have for private equity? You're like, oh, you mean it affords me to be off?
Oh, totally. I know.
Right.
As in, I'm like, yeah, I don't basically, lose sleep once a quarter thinking that I have to go into some board meeting and sing for my supper as the owner of my own business. I was going to ask, as an agency owner, how do you think about, the personnel that you hire, the way in which you use AI? This is, I know, a very broad question, but I'm just curious, what is it? What crosses your mind? I think you mentioned you employ like 21 people, which is no small amount for an agency. That's actually a ton. So yeah, I'm just curious how you think about it.
So I have banned the use of AI for any creative writing.
Fair. Could
I
you,
have. If
yeah,
Amazon catches you, they will ban you as a publisher for you're done. Right.
yeah.
So
Wow.
we can't even mess around that. But with process, with note taking and lists and all that kind of stuff, that's absolutely where it's at. That if I have to do something that takes more than an hour or two of my time per week, I will hire for it.
Yeah. Smart.
You have to get some of the things off your plate, like payroll and things that are very scary to do. This is probably 10 years ago. I was in Belgium, my wife's parents' house. I think it was Christmas. And it was the first time I had actually hired someone to do payroll. And we were gone for like 3 weeks. And she simply just texted me the amount. And I'm like, okay. And that was it. And that was the first time I
Amazing.
realized I had freed myself from this
Yeah.
thing that had literally haunted me for the entire time as a business owner. And then
Totally.
and that's the thing. But now I'm looking for proof that I'm right. So the problem is I gravitate toward books that simply reinforce my real or imagined, predisposition. So I got to be aware of that. But I think if you're spending more than a couple hours a week doing something, you got to hire for it, or you can't scale. Which is where a chief of staff or where an assistant comes from. I mean, in terms of but the thing is that for production stuff, I stay
Hmm.
the hell out of production.
Mm.
You're not going to find me. Maybe process. Maybe like,
Yeah.
well, this contract needs to be here or this insurance needs to be there. But I absolutely am out of the actual production business. I'll never be back in the production business. I
Yeah.
cannot. I don't want to be. I don't want to be cooking. I want to run the restaurant.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it seems like running the restaurant is really your strength. How do you? One question, one follow up that I have though, because this is very relevant to all of our customers, right? Is how do you instill that sort of like mindset in your employees? You mentioned you ban it for creative writing, but one thing that I notice with a lot of employees is that they're quite afraid of AI, embracing AI because they think that that's like speeding up their demise. So how do you kind of instill that message in them and that, you know, they should be approaching things with a certain framework?
So there's a ethos that I've been working on that I didn't realize I was working on it, but it's been kind of working out in my brain. It goes something like this. People want real experiences. They want to read real things written by real people. They want to see actual things. And this kind of bespoke idea that things can be produced by humans. The farther we're into this AI world, the more people are going to start seeking out real experiences like that. And as a result, that's the thing. So we're really writing books, as writing teams for humans, telling real stories by humans for humans to read, right?
Totally.
And as a result, that's how we kind of do yes no on creativity when it comes to, yeah, sure, brainstorm all you want, but the actual
Yeah.
content itself can't come from AI for a lot of reasons, legally being one of them and morally being the other one, because that's what we do. We're bespoking, we're handwriting, we're sanding down, we're creating. I mean, it's art, and art. I want to hire AI to do my freaking dishes, not make the music. Right? That's
Yeah.
what I want to do. I want to
Mhm.
paint. I don't want to have AI do it. It feels gross. So that's
Totally
kind of
agree.
how I got here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. This is a naive question for someone in your business. Obviously, I just don't have I have less awareness. Is Amazon kind of king? And I mean, you
Yeah,
mentioned
sure.
not wanting to get banned by Amazon, but if I'm trying to get a bestseller in any category, is because I have a number of friends who are Amazon sellers, like as in they have private label businesses on Amazon. So I know of that whole industry. Is it kind of the same for books where it's like there's a formula, a way, a process? I mean, I know at the end of the day, it's got to be good substance, but yeah, is that kind of fair?
So behind every great fortune is a great crime. Right? And I
Mm,
see a lot of things behind the scenes. I think you'll see a lot of
I'm
these
sure.
bestsellers have there's a lot of horse
Yes,
shit going on.
totally.
And the thing is we don't write books to become bestsellers. We write books to extend brands and to also make more money, but not books. Right?
Got it.
There's like a handful of people that sold 100,000 copies last year.
Yeah,
Doesn't happen, right?
like
It's just
like in
statistically
total,
going to happen,
in
right?
in total, you're saying a handful of people that
Yeah,
did
it
that
just
in
doesn't
total.
happen. It's
Yeah,
just it's not a lot of people. And the way we use books is, we actually have them send their prospective book through Amazon because everybody opens an Amazon package with their name on it, right? It's a way around the gatekeeper. We use it in a different way. We send it to reporters as proof that the person knows they're talking about or should be interviewed on whatever, right? It's used in a completely different way. The idea that you're a bestseller, that New York Times bestsellers, that's all actually done by sales over bookstores, brick and mortar bookstores, which is horseshit, right? Know who the hell goes into bookstores anymore? It's absolute horseshit, right? So the fact that someone's in, NYT Best Times, like, congratulations, you had the right whatever. Go
Yeah.
get that done. But more than likely, it wasn't above board. But what do I know? I'm not saying above all of them are like that, but it's definitely a lot of them are bullshit. So
No, I totally, and obviously I know they're a huge partner, so I'm not trying to cause any issues, but something that is
yeah.
really interesting to me is
No,
the
Amazon,
world.
no. Amazon's incredible. They are absolutely bonkers how amazing they. Think about it. We write books that literally don't have to sit in a storehouse because they're
Yes.
printed as they're sold. What a not
Yes.
waste of money. What an incredible way not to waste money.
Totally. But to your point, on Amazon, I mean, there's just so much shenanigans, and it's not them, it's the people using Amazon. There's a lot, I learned from my friends, so very keen. Somebody at some point, well, I'm sure they've done already an expose, but I'm sure it's quite hard to do it, but it'll be interesting whenever that comes out.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, but they're not the only game in town in terms of print on demand. So if you want to sell on like Walmart or Walmart.com, there's other avenues that don't have nothing to do with Amazon. If you want to be in Target, all those different, there's other ways of doing that have nothing to do with Amazon. But Amazon is the 4 trillion pound gorilla, and they probably will they will never not be true. I don't see a world, although I was listening to a New York Times podcast the other day, and this professor was saying that, people are reading less and less. The capacity for them to read is getting less and less and less.
Kind of like
so
social media.
Yeah. Well, it's a short-term attention span and kind of all that, jazz. But there's a world where the idea that you're going to go to school and you're going to go to college and you're going to learn about Shakespeare and you're going to write a half-assed paper about that, about King Lear or something, that's dead.
Right.
It'll be dead in 3 to 5 years.
Well, I think it was Bill Gates who came out recently who said that he said in 10 years there aren't going to be any doctors or teachers because of AI. And I was like, whoa, that's a pretty grand statement. So that's a world, yeah.
It is.
I've got two.
I
know you mentioned you've got a kid who's graduating high school soon-ish. I've got two. I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I've got two very young children. So, yeah, I'm being confronted on the daily about the prospect of them not doing really any. Someone mentioned cursive the other day, and I was like, yeah, my children will never learn cursive.
They can't even read it.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, I spent a lot of time learning how to write my name. I feel like
that's right. But also think about the little bumps in your brain that resulted from that. Right.
Totally.
Because if success in life is your ability to sit down and do something for long periods of time, and I would argue it is your ability to concentrate on the single problem, getting it done. Right. That all those things helped you get here. Our kids are not going to be equipped for that.
Totally. Yeah, I know you bring up
very different.
Yeah, if you look at a lot of really great product creators, right? One common thread is a lot of them are very into design, right? And if they're either into design, some of them are into architecture. One of the things that I was always drawn towards was typography. And yeah, to your point, it's like, if you were to look at typography, it's like, what a joke of a class. You're going to learn about different, fonts or whatever it is. But actually, I worry for a generation that doesn't study these types of things, because I think that the fundamentals of design are still quite important no matter what we do. So yeah, it's quite interesting.
No new design, because it'll basically just be old design rehashed over and over again.
Totally.
Tyler, we're out of time.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the conversation.
Me too.
So I'll add all the links to your profile, your company,
Please.
all the things at the bottom of this episode. And it was lovely meeting you.
Scott, it was awesome. Thank you so much.